For the first time, Daniel notices something strange after the end of the workday. He stays in the classroom to prepare materials for the first day of school when suddenly, in the silence, a faint tapping sound begins. At first glance, it might seem like nothing more than an annoying noise from the old building. However, with each passing second, the taps become increasingly rhythmic. Daniel's heart starts pounding harder when he realizes that the tapping clearly follows a pattern. 3 short taps, then a pause, followed by 3 more taps. He looks around, but there's no one nearby. Nevertheless, the tapping continues, seemingly emanating directly from the classroom door. A vague sense of unease washes over Daniel, and he decides to approach the door. With each step he takes, the tapping becomes louder and more insistent. When he finally reaches the door and places his hand on the handle, the tapping abruptly stops, as if nothing had happened. His heart beats in unison with that mysterious rhythmic sequence. He slowly opens the door, expecting to see something strange or horrifying. But before him stretches an empty corridor, illuminated only by the pale moonlight streaming through the tall windows. Daniel cautiously steps into the corridor and looks around, searching for the source of the tapping. But there's nothing unusual around him. Step by step, he proceeds down the corridor, reassuring himself that it's just a random coincidence, that there's no threat. However, as he approaches the end of the corridor, the tapping suddenly starts from the opposite direction. Now it's coming from the classroom he just left. Daniel freezes in his tracks, petrified with fear. The tapping sounds get faster and louder, as if growing in intensity and filling the entire corridor. Almost instinctively, Daniel starts running, leaving behind the ominous corridor and the terrifying sounds. He returns to his classroom, the door slamming shut behind him, and the tapping abruptly stops, as if nothing had happened. Daniel remains in the classroom, listening to every noise, expecting to hear those eerie taps again. He realizes that his new life in this town has become a real nightmare, and he decides to uncover the mysteries hidden behind these dark events. The following morning, Daniel meets his new students, little and innocent, with smiles on their faces. However, as he begins to explain the schedule for the first day, he notices that one of the boys seems to fix his gaze on something in the air, as if he's seeing something that isn't there. Later, during recess, a little girl approaches Daniel and timidly asks, "Mr. Daniel, have you seen the shadow on the wall?" At first, he tries to convince her that it's just a play of light, but the girl insists that she saw a dark figure moving along the wall when no one was there. Other children start sharing similar stories. Many of them talk about seeing strange shadows and hearing whispers when they were alone. They describe dark figures taking shape on the walls, and it seems that these visions haunt them, leaving them with a sense of fear. Daniel begins to feel that something is amiss. He decides to conduct an experiment. He asks the children to draw what they've seen. He provides them with sheets of paper and paints, and the results astonish him. Almost all the drawings are nearly identical. Dark silhouettes resembling a human figure with elongated shadows reaching toward them. The teacher's fear grows as he realizes that these children, seemingly independently of each other, are seeing the same thing. He starts documenting each case, trying to understand what this might mean. Daniel conducts additional sessions to learn more. He talks to the children individually, asking them about their families and interests, but he doesn't find anything unusual. Nevertheless, each story confirms that the children's visions are connected to this building and occur when no one else is around. As Daniel delves deeper into the investigation, he begins to notice that the dark silhouettes sometimes flicker in his peripheral vision. He feels like something is watching him, as if he has become the subject of observation. Overwhelmed by fear yet determined to uncover the truth, Daniel realizes that he urgently needs to find out what happened in this place many years ago, something that might be linked to these terrifying visions haunting the children. Daniel begins to dig through the school archives, hoping to find any clues about past events. In the old library, he discovers dusty boxes filled with musty documents. Among them are old newspaper clippings, students' diaries, and school journals. For hours, Daniel reads descriptions of past first days of school and stumbles upon peculiar mentions of an inhuman teacher who worked at the school a long time ago. In the children's diaries, it's mentioned that the teacher would often disappear during lessons, and when he returned, his eyes emitted an eerie light. As Daniel delves deeper into the diaries and old newspapers, he begins to uncover references to strange rituals that the teacher conducted in the school's basement. In the students' records, there are accounts of them seeing shadows and hearing knocks on the night before the first day of school. The documents indicate that the teacher was involved in magic and dark rituals. Some entries mention strange symbols and signs he used in his rituals. Daniel realizes that this teacher might have been a key figure in a chain of horrifying events related to the first day of school. In one of the dusty boxes, he finds an old photograph of students who disappeared on the night before the first day of school that year. The children's expressions in the photo are filled with anxiety and fear. Daniel understands that he has found the beginning of a mysterious story, and decides to continue the investigation to unravel all the secrets of the past and protect his students from the horrors that threaten to repeat themselves. Inspired by his new findings, Daniel meticulously examines his classroom and the surrounding area for additional clues. While the children are occupied with their tasks, he begins to search the corners of the classroom and walls, looking for any suspicious signs. Suddenly, his gaze locks onto something on the back wall of the classroom. It appears to be marks resembling tiny, deep indentations forming something like mysterious symbols. Daniel approaches to get a better look, realizing that these marks can't simply be attributed to aging and wear. He senses that these indentations form a pattern of some kind. He takes out a notepad and carefully sketches the symbols, trying to recreate them accurately. With each subsequent symbol, he becomes more convinced that they are not random but hold some profound significance. Completing his sketches, Daniel compares them to the ones he found in the old documents. He realizes that the symbols on the wall resemble those used in the teacher's rituals. Now, he has solid grounds to believe that the mysterious events related to the first day of school are not coincidental. Fear and determination wrestle within Daniel. On one hand, he feels he's on the right path to unraveling the mystery. On the other hand, he understands that the dark forces entangled in past rituals might still be active and dangerous. Resolved not to stop at what he's achieved, Daniel begins to explore the deeper aspects of these symbols. He turns to old books on magic, rituals, and occult practices. In the course of his research, he learns that these symbols are connected to opening portals and communicating with the otherworldly. The fear of awakening an evil that lies dormant intensifies his determination to understand how to protect his students and break the chain of events linked to these mysterious symbols. The long-awaited 1st of September arrives, but this time the air is thick with an atmosphere of unease. Children come to school, talking amongst themselves and casting glances at the classroom, as if sensing that something is amiss. Even the usual jokes and joyful voices can't drown out the strange feeling of tension. As soon as Daniel enters the classroom, he notices that the ominous shadows he saw in his peripheral vision have become more pronounced. They seem to hover at the edge of his sight, and he feels as though something is watching him. Throughout the morning, he observes that the children are behaving strangely. They've become silent, withdrawn, and periodically cast puzzled glances at the walls, as if seeing something he cannot discern. Daniel senses that the evil awakened by the mysterious symbols is beginning to envelop the children. As lessons begin, events become even stranger and more horrifying. Frightening messages appear on the chalkboard, written in what appears to be blood, words that couldn't possibly have appeared there on their own. Educational materials slowly rise into the air and fall, as if an invisible force is toying with them. By the end of the day, Daniel realizes that the situation is spiraling out of control. Children start hearing strange whispers and seeing flickering figures gliding along the walls. They themselves are becoming more susceptible to the influence of these sinister forces. The classroom lights start flickering, and the shadows merge into one large mass, resembling a serpent, covering the walls. Daniel understands that he needs to act before these forces completely overtake his students. He takes the symbols he drew from his bag and begins to recite a prayer while attempting to create a protective barrier against the evil. The air fills with horrifying screams and shrieks, and the children begin to convulse, as if their bodies are subjected to invisible torment. With each minute of Daniel's struggle against the darkness, the atmosphere grows more tense. Ultimately, he feels his strength waning, but he doesn't give up. In the last moment, he utters the final words of the incantation, and the entire classroom is enveloped in a bright light. When the light dissipates, Daniel sees that the shadows have disappeared, and the children are looking at him with eyes filled with gratitude and astonishment. He knows that he has defeated this evil, but he also understands that this is only the beginning of his battle with the mysterious forces that may awaken again. After the tragic events of the 1st of September, Daniel decides to learn more about the former teacher mentioned in the old documents. His investigation leads him to a discreet door in the school's basement. However, the door is locked, and he will have to find ways to gain access. Soon, Daniel begins to hear rumors among the staff about a secret society that could be linked to the teacher and the strange events. He manages to find a rare book in the local library that reveals details about this secret society. The society was called the Brotherhood of Shadows and was known for its connections to magic and occult practices. They conducted rituals and ceremonies to attain power and achieve their goals. The teacher in question was the leader of this society. Daniel realizes that the events at the school may be connected to the revival of this secret society. He decides to find a way to penetrate the basement to find additional evidence, and possibly uncover how to stop these ominous forces once and for all. However, every step he takes toward discovering the truth leads to new mysteries and dangers. He understands that he is not alone in this strange investigation, and that there are those who want the past to remain forgotten. Daniel begins to suspect that the secret society still exists, and that someone is trying to resurrect its dark rituals. With each discovery, Daniel delves deeper into a world of mysteries and horrors that extends far beyond the school's walls. He will have to overcome his fear and doubts to uncover the secrets of the Brotherhood of Shadows and save his students from the danger that is so close to the surface. Daniel begins to search for former students and staff members who might share memories of the former teacher and the secret society. He discovers that many of them avoid discussing this topic, as if fearing to awaken old fears. Finally, he finds a few former students who decide to share their memories. They talk about the mysterious lessons taught by the teacher, about meetings in the basement where strange rituals were conducted, and about something inhuman they witnessed on the day before the 1st of September. One of the former students, Mila, recalls how she accidentally ended up in the basement and became a witness to one of the rituals. She describes how the teacher suddenly seemed to encounter something invisible, some dark forces that began to control him. Another former student, Alex, remembers finding the teacher's notes, which mentioned his attempts to open a portal to the otherworldly realm in order to gain invisible power and knowledge. Alex claims that the teacher was willing to sacrifice children for his ambitions. The memories of these witnesses only confirm the horrifying suspicions that Daniel had. He realizes that the secret society, the Brotherhood of Shadows, was much more dangerous and influential than he could have imagined. He understands that the forces awakened on the day before the 1st of September may still be active and seeking a way to return. Daniel decides to use the witnesses' memories as a key to unraveling the mysteries and uncovering the secrets of the secret society. He understands that he needs to find a way to enter the basement and gather additional evidence to thwart the ominous plans that could lead to a repetition of the horrifying events of the past. As Daniel delves into the memories of the witnesses and the materials about the Brotherhood of Shadows, he begins to pay attention to the symbolism frequently mentioned in descriptions of rituals and documents. The symbols he saw on the classroom walls and that were used in past rituals become key to him. He starts analyzing the meaning of these symbols, researching their origins and their connection to magical practices. In his hands, he acquires a rare artifact, a book on ancient rituals and magical symbols, which becomes his textbook and primary source of knowledge. With each deepening of his study of symbolism, Daniel begins to see patterns and connections between different symbols. He uncovers that they were used to open portals between worlds and summon forces from dark dimensions. He begins to understand that these symbols hold the key to how to stop the evil and prevent the recurrence of horrifying events. Daniel decides to create a containment barrier using the knowledge he gained from the book. He draws intricate geometric figures, connecting the symbols he discovered in the classroom and old documents. It's not an easy task, but he realizes it's the only way to stop the evil and protect his students during his work. He encounters new difficulties and dangers. The secret society, the Brotherhood of Shadows, won't leave him in peace, and he feels that his every move is now being monitored. He understands that time is running out, and that he needs to complete his mission before the dark forces are activated once again. Armed with knowledge of symbols and rituals, Daniel prepares for the final confrontation with the evil that haunts him and his students. He realizes that this battle may be the last and decisive one, and that the outcome depends solely on his determination and mastery of magic and symbols. As Daniel progresses in his investigation and prepares for the confrontation, he begins to experience strange and frightening visions. These visions come to him both during wakefulness and in his dreams, making him doubt his sanity. In one of his visions, he finds himself in the school's basement, where he sees a teacher's desk with scattered documents and books. Mysterious symbols on the walls begin to glow, and he hears whispers and sinister laughter echoing in the air. He realizes that this vision is warning him that evil is ready to return. Another vision takes him to a dark forest where he sees his students surrounded by flickering shadows. They look lost and scared, and their voices reach him like a faint breeze. The vision overwhelms him with a sense of powerlessness and despair, and he realizes that he must find a way to protect them from this threat. With each new vision, Daniel understands that he has become a part of the struggle between light and darkness, and that evil is trying to communicate its presence and intimidate him. Instead of succumbing to fear, he uses these visions as motivation to deepen his knowledge and strengthen his resolve. He realizes that his investigation and battle against evil go far beyond his personal fears and doubts. This has become the purpose of his life, and he is willing to go to the end to prevent tragedy and save his students. As each day passes, the secret society, the Brotherhood of Shadows, becomes more active, and the visions intensify. Daniel knows that time is running out, and he must gather all his strength and knowledge to confront this horrifying threat and protect everyone who depends on him. The visions become increasingly intense and lifelike, as if darkness is starting to seep into the real world through their edges. Daniel feels that evil is drawing near, and he must act quickly to stop it. Strange events begin to unfold around him. Shadows flicker even in bright light, and the whispers grow louder. Doors close on their own, and the air becomes heavy with a sense of dread. The children become more frightened and susceptible to the influence of dark forces. Daniel realizes that evil has already started infiltrating his world, and he must act swiftly. He decides to perform a final ritual to create a containment barrier that should stop the evil and protect his students. He knows that this ritual is dangerous and complex, but he's willing to take the risk to save everyone. Following the instructions from the ancient rituals book, Daniel begins to perform intricate ceremonies. He draws symbols on the floor and walls, recites incantations, and invokes the powers of light. Everything around him begins to tremble, and the air fills with magical energy. But at the most critical moment of the ritual, something goes awry. Dark shadows start to coil around the symbols, disrupting the barrier he's trying to create. Daniel realizes that the evil is stronger than he anticipated, and he needs to gather all his strength to overcome it. The power of his will and determination compels Daniel to keep fighting. He recites the incantations with greater force and fervor, summoning light and goodness. Energy vibrates around him, and he feels his own essence clash with the darkness. Suddenly, the entire classroom is bathed in bright light, and the sounds of whispers disappear. Daniel understands that he has managed to create a containment barrier and halt the approaching evil. But he also realizes that this is only a momentary victory and that the battle against darkness is far from over. He knows that it's time for the final confrontation with the Brotherhood of Shadows, and that only by delving into the deepest depths of evil can he ultimately uproot it and save his students. After successfully creating the containment barrier, Daniel begins to prepare for the final stage of his battle with the Brotherhood of Shadows. He knows that the dark forces will not leave him in peace, and will attempt to find ways to breach his protection. He understands that his efforts may be the last hope to stop the evil. He starts to delve into additional details about the rituals and secret practices of the Brotherhood of Shadows. He turns to books and documents he has found, trying to identify weaknesses in their plans. He realizes that in order to thwart the evil, he needs to comprehend the specific goals pursued by the Society's members. During his research, Daniel comes across mentions of an ancient artifact believed to possess the power to control dark forces and portals. This artifact, known as the Key of Darkness, has been considered lost for centuries. Daniel realizes that this might be his last hope. However, finding the Key of Darkness proves to be an incredibly challenging task. He embarks on a quest, studying additional sources, and following leads he discovers in old texts. While dark forces constantly attempt to interrupt his search and force him to retreat, Daniel maintains his determination and clandestinely gathers information about the artifact's whereabouts. Ultimately, his search leads him to an abandoned church deep within the forest. This place is known to have been the site of rituals conducted by the Brotherhood of Shadows in the past. Daniel understands that here lies the key to finding the Key of Darkness. With trepidation and resolve in his heart, he enters the church, prepared to face whatever awaits him inside. In his hands lies the last hope to halt the evil and save his world. The church is shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere that seems to press upon Daniel with each step. Old wooden pews and cracked windows create the illusion that something has been waiting here for a long time. Daniel realizes that he has entered the heart of a dark place where the Brotherhood of Shadows once conducted their horrifying rituals. The air inside the church fills with an eerie cold, as if the breath of death itself. The candles he lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, creating the illusion of movement among inanimate objects. The sounds of his own footsteps become both loud and muffled, as if he is now alone in this forsaken place. As he ventures deeper into the church, he notices strange drawings and symbols on the walls. These drawings emit a faint phosphorescent glow, as if they come to life under his gaze. The symbols look familiar. They are the same ones he saw in the classroom and in the documents. They seem to lead him further into the church. As he progresses, he finds himself standing before a grand altar. On the altar, he sees an ancient scroll adorned with symbols resembling those he used in his rituals. The candlelight begins to flicker faster, and the air fills with a strange scent, as if blood and incense have blended into a single ethereal aura. Daniel realizes that he has found the place that the Brotherhood of Shadows used for their dark rituals. His heart begins to beat faster, and he feels the ominous influence of this place weighing down on him. He's frightened, but he understands that this is his last chance to find the key of darkness and stop the evil. Summoning all his strength, Daniel begins to recite verses from the Book of Rituals. The air around him starts to hum and vibrate, and the symbols on the walls begin to glow brightly. He senses that something is happening, as if the boundary between worlds is beginning to blur. Suddenly, before his eyes, shadowy figures start to take shape, trembling and distorted. They become clearer and more defined, as if they are trying to break free from the darkness and enter this world. Daniel realizes that he has opened a portal, and the dark forces are beginning to seep through the spiritual gates. The shadowy figures slowly materialize before Daniel. These are entities that appear as distorted, blurry figures, as if they exist between worlds. Their eyes gleam with sinister light, and their dark forms exude menace. Daniel realizes that he is in a perilous situation. He is face to face with members of the Brotherhood of Shadows who have gathered here to counter his attempt to stop them. In this mysterious intersection of worlds, they can harness their magical power to the fullest. He begins to recite incantations, attempting to gain control of the situation. He invokes the powers of light and goodness, trying to repel the dark figures. But his powers seem insignificant in the face of the magical might of the Brotherhood of Shadows. They start to advance toward him like waves of darkness, ready to engulf him. Daniel manages to create a temporary barrier that holds them at bay for a moment. He realizes that in order to cross the spiritual gates and defeat the evil, he needs something more powerful. Remembering the key of darkness, he starts reciting special incantations to summon the artifact. Immediately, a radiant glow appears on the altar, and the key of darkness materializes. It emits a powerful energy that begins to battle the ominous figures. Daniel clenches the artifact in his hand, feeling its power coursing through him. With determination, he repels the dark figures and creates a protective sphere around himself. Using the magical power of the key of darkness, he understands that this is his chance to confront the Brotherhood of Shadows and stop the evil. He begins to chant spells and harness his magical abilities to face the dark wizards attempting to breach his defenses. The clash of magical forces creates streams of light and darkness that warp the space around them. The sounds of incantations intertwine with the whispers of shadows, creating a dissonance of sounds. Daniel realizes that he is on the brink between two worlds, and his determination becomes the last hope for saving the world from darkness. The clash of magical forces reaches its peak, and Daniel realizes that his defense is starting to weaken. He feels the dark figures penetrating through the gaps in his barrier, and his magical power begins to wane. He knows that he has only moments left to secure victory once and for all. The power of the key of darkness begins to surge around him, emanating waves of intense energy. He tries to hold off the attack of the dark figures, but his strength is diminishing with each passing second. The dark figures draw nearer, and he senses the cold and menace radiating from them. Daniel understands that to save himself and the world, he will have to make the ultimate sacrifice. He decides to use the remnants of his magical power to create a powerful spell capable of destroying the evil and the dark figures. However, he also knows that this spell will cost him his life. Gathering all his strength and willpower, Daniel begins to recite the spell. Light and darkness start to battle around him, creating torrents of energy that rip through the air. The sound of his words becomes otherworldly, as if he is addressing the very gods. The dark figures begin to fade, dissipating into the darkness. Daniel feels them retreating, but he also realizes that this is his final moment. The energy within him begins to ebb, and he comprehends that the sacrifice for salvation demands the highest price from him. In the last words of the incantation, he senses a surge of power erupting from within him. Light emanates from his body, instantly filling the church and erupting in a brilliant flash. The might of the spell tears apart the spiritual gates, and the darkness begins to dissipate. Daniel vanishes into a sea of light, leaving only an empty space behind. The dark figures disappear, and the church remains quiet and abandoned. The world is saved, but it has lost its hero, the one who sacrificed himself to stop the evil. With time, people begin to remember Daniel as the one who gave his life to save the world. His story becomes a legend, and his courage and determination inspire many to do good and fight against the darkness.